Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of retelling of the old Tales from Outer Space, or RE007. If you have never seen one of these before, I take old stories and do them again, back to the standard that we use now. I have a huge favor. If you could click the like and subscribe button, it would mean a lot to me. Anyways, on to the story. Those Who Remember by RegalLegalEagle. He looked out through the diner window, the rain beating down against it, as the storm beyond had whipped the bay into a teeming mass of waves with white crests. Slowly, he rubbed a hand along his jaw. His beard had once been a rich auburn, now simply white. Then he looked back at the fresh-faced young man who had asked him the question. He was wearing one of those new fancy suits, some sort of synthetic fibers, the latest rage. Those young eyes didn't know the kind of hardship and pain he'd been through. Did they know anything but peace and prosperity? Seems impossible that within his life there was a generation that didn't know war and strife. "How far back would you like me to go?" he finally asked the young man. "As far back as you're willing to." He slid a hollow recorder across the table to make sure the conversation was captured in full detail. The old man wondered if it meant the storm outside was going to be on it as well. Slowly he sighed out and took a sip of the dark black coffee he had ordered. "We came from a place once known as the Midwest, back on Earth, the area known locally as America. You probably know more about that place than I did if you paid attention in history. I never went to a real school or nothing. My mother's mother taught me reading and writing, and basic numbers. My dad taught me how to maintain and clean my gun, how to shoot and fight. We did plenty of that. After the last round of wars, after our ancestors left, things were bad. We had scavenged some old military trucks, our clan, so we'd drive them around, followed the game, living off the land and the fruits and veggies that we could scrounge up." He thought back on his childhood, back on Earth, scratching the side of his nose idly while in thought. "There were about 500 of us in the clan. My dad was important, chief mechanic, kept everything running. That was big. If you couldn't keep ahead of the storms, you weren't going to survive. Well, storms and raiders. Raiders? Oh yeah, for those clans like mine that was content to survive and scrounge, there were others who wanted more. Or perhaps they wanted what we wanted, but just thought it was easier to take what we had. We'd get attacked at least once a week. I was in my first firefight at 14. By 16, I was a scout. Had myself an old dune buggy I fixed up myself." He smiled as he thought back on his buggy. It was little more than an engine, 4 wheels, and a seat strapped to a frame. But when he was a kid, it was the greatest thing in the world. At least, that world. My father was killed in a raid when I was 18. I had the gift for machinery like him, but they needed me to fight more than fix for a while. We found the beacon when I was 19. It was an old military base we were scavenging when I found it. I had no idea what the Slavic Federation was, and I couldn't speak Russian, but I could tell that it wasn't old tech. It was something new, something important. I convinced the others to change what we'd been doing, to settle in the base and protect it until I could figure it out. Was it difficult to convince everyone? No. They saw what I meant when I pointed it out. Someone had sent something shiny and new back to Earth. We knew the old legends. We were ready for some hope. So we set up shop. The raids became more regular, but we now had a solid spot to defend. Turned out I didn't need to learn Russian. We'd been there about a month when the transmission came through. 6 or 7 different languages. English was one of them. Told us to sit tight and how to respond. "Were you nervous? Someone from another planet tries to talk to me." Heck yes, I was nervous. But I followed the instructions, and thankfully they were idiot-proof. I got in touch with the program, answered what I could, and they told us our clan would be first. I didn't know what for, but I was too nervous to ask. So we got everything we had ready for travel. Just like ordered. We patched up our pressure suits and stood around the beacon. 4 hours, just standing there. I started to worry someone was messing with us. The raiders didn't attack, no, thankfully. Then we were somewhere else. You ever used one of those gates? No, I haven't. It's interesting. It's like somehow you know you went somewhere, and you feel like you got squished and rebuilt. But all that in an instant. Anyway, there we were, suddenly somewhere else. It was gorgeous, too. Like the old pictures my mother's mother would show me. The national parks, they used to call them. It was all green and alive and just gorgeous. I figured no one would be trying to kill me here. Of course, I was wrong. They didn't tell you about the war. Well, from what I understand, when they activated the beacon, the war hadn't started. I mean, it feels like an instant, but it was actually like a week. I'm not a scientist, so I can't be sure. Either way, I finally noticed the soldiers waving us forward. I had an old military rifle at the time. Among the clans, it was highly prized, very advanced compared to the old beat-up milsurp the others had. The what? Sorry, old term, it remains from the last war. Just common rifles they pumped out in the millions to arm as many people as possible. Mine was a special forces weapon handed down from my father's mother. I was also wearing a combat harness pressure suit instead of a civilian models the others had. So, they have to understand as a 19-year-old at the time, I felt like a real elite soldier. He chuckled and shook his head, laughing for a moment. What is it? Oh, just how wrong I was. You know everything when you're a teen. Well, the guys were waving us forward, shouting in Russian. They had real armor, real guns. Right away, I could tell they could kill us all without much effort. I'm not sure that unloading a whole clip into one of them would have even fazed him. So, there we were, standing in a paradise, wondering why the soldiers were trying to get us to get off the platform. Then the African Union attacked. Boom! Explosions all around us. Everyone was screaming, finally moving, running the way the soldiers were pointing. We heard the trees snapping and animals we'd never seen flying off into the sky in surprise. These sleek black killer robots all around us. The LEV tanks were backing up, holding them back. Battlesuits sprawling with CNDRs. It was chaos. Here we were, a bunch of stupid hicks in the middle of a fight between gods. Were you scared? Of course I was. This wasn't a raider attack. My gun, my prized possession. I saw some of the troops' apostles. I shot at them, and my bullets just scratched their paint. The Centurions waved me off. They weren't exactly winning the battle. So we kept running. Those in trucks, driving around in craters and trying not to get shot up too much. Finally, we made it to a mag rail station. A LEV destroyer was parked in front of it. Now, obviously, I've never seen anything like the battlesuits and LEV tanks, but something about that guy, just the sheer size and power as it sat there, spitting out artillery fire. It was amazing. More than being transported across the galaxy. Well, like I said, that wasn't much of an experience. It just sort of happened, and I didn't understand it. But that LEV destroyer, it was awe-inspiring. I stood there as the others pushed around me. I was just standing there like a slack-jawed local watching this glorious, magnificent, incredible piece of engineering blow those robots up. But finally, one of the soldiers set his hand on my shoulder, pointing to the rest of the clan that was leaving me behind, and said something else in Russian, which I still didn't know. That would have been your wife. Yes, of course, I didn't know it then. In the heavy armor, she just looked like another soldier. What did she say to you? She changes her answer depending on who's around. But I think the truth is she told me to stop standing there like a target and get my butt moving. The old man grinned as he thought back at that. So I did. I caught up with everyone else as the other soldiers were waving us onto the mag train. There were some old ruins with the monorails in the craters of some big cities, but I never dreamed of seeing something up and running. It was all a lot to take in. But the battle kept us from slowing down. Did you lose anyone? No. The soldiers made sure that we all got through okay. I think they felt responsible since they called us from Earth into a war without warning us. We sat on the train, watching the land slip past us. All that lush green land, like I said before, it was a paradise to us. No dust storms, no derelict dead cities. Lush green paradise. We saw the small towns and cities we passed back, but it looked like Earth, just way nicer. How did you know it wasn't just the sky? I couldn't put my finger on it, but it wasn't quite right. And then, of course, when we passed through those massive chitin paddocks as we approached Krabrost, those were not Earth critters. No way, no how. What was your impression of the capital? Well, we didn't stop that first day. They were trying to get us the hell away from the fighting. We just saw it from the mag rail as we went past. We could see it in the distance, massive buildings towering high into the sky. It was even more beautiful than the pictures I'd seen of our old cities before everything went to hell. I now know that they planned on having a big ceremony at the gate and an event explaining all of this to us. But the war had started rather suddenly, so they were scrambling to get us to safety. Did you know things weren't going well? I could guess. I mean, everyone was mostly stunned and shocked, still at how fast the land was moving beneath us. But I noticed all the other trains heading the way we'd come. LEV tanks, rows of battlesuits, the Predators flying by. Our train was diverted near the city for LEV destroyers to move past. It took up both tracks. The train kept going on into the night. We huddled up, ate our rations, and wondered what was going on. They'd say things like PA, but none of us knew Russian, and he didn't know English. So you'd say it was poorly planned, poorly executed. Like I said, I learned about all their plans afterwards, which sounded good. They just didn't plan on a war, so they couldn't do what they'd planned. I mean, considering the war and all, they did very well keeping us alive. It took us 2 days to get to Dirt, but we had traveled half a continent in that time. Ah yes, Dirt. That was your idea for a name. Hell yes it was. After all the gorgeous forests and lush paradise we traveled through, they dropped us off in some barren dirt here in this bay. They had some prefab buildings set up, very sloppy, obviously rushed. That's when I met Grigory, the old ambassador to Ark before the war. He spoke English and explained more of what was going on. I'll be honest, until he told us those robots were an African Union and they'd been human at some point, I never would have guessed. There were some officials, obviously unsure of how to proceed. What happened? He told us the land was ours. They were going to be bringing in more people from Earth, but since we were the first, we'd get to name the first city. I asked if they were going to be bringing in other Americans only, or anyone. He told me everyone they could find on Earth was welcome to join us. So I said that we should call it Dirt. They were a little confused and asked if I meant Earth. I said no. I didn't want to name it something that only made sense to Americans, and I figured everyone was willing to fight for their own patch of dirt. So we all agreed to call it Dirt. The officials didn't like it, but Grigory just laughed. He approved? Sure did. What happened next? We started building up Dirt. He waved a hand out through the window. The city is now quite different than it was. Everyone built their own little section. I'm sure you're aware my family owns the docks. How did that come about? We'd never seen the ocean before, let alone go swimming, and we all discovered we loved it. We had more than our fair share of dust, so we made sure to settle along the waterfront. Everyone found their own little spot. Africans, Europeans, Asians, all the leftovers who didn't have ancestors lucky enough to leave. They found them where they could and brought them here. Few of us spoke the same language, but we got along. We had a real home now. We had our own dirt. But it wasn't that easy, was it? No. The first year before the next wave of settlers could be found, we were attacked by Ark. The front had been secured along the original borders with the African Union, but the coast was exposed. I couldn't believe it. Somehow it didn't really hit me that Ark was Americans. When the soldiers showed up and they were speaking English, their alien physiology twisted and inhuman, they spoke English. It was hard to accept at first. What happened? They attacked the city. People died, buildings were destroyed, but we survived. We'd been attacked before we knew what to do. The army showed up before they could do much more than mess up the town. After that, I demanded to join the military and help. They wouldn't let you. I couldn't believe it. But they first told me it was their responsibility to fight for us. We struggled our whole lives. Now they wanted us to live in peace while they struggled for us. I couldn't believe their desire for sacrifice on a national level. Their desire, hell, our desire. I mean, at this point, it's obviously more than just a Slavic federation. We still had allies with the Franco-Iberians and the Brazilians. How long did it take to be admitted? I had to learn Russian, and then I built a small LEV forklift on my own, without proper tools. That convinced them to let me become an LEV mechanic. I just kept at it, repairing tanks until I met my wife. Her crew was dead. We were fighting hard against the Union again. This must have been 5 years into the war. Me and the other mechanics fixed it up, jumped in, and went to war. Didn't stop for the next 20 years. So, you were there for all of it? Sure was. Got married and had some kids while it was all going on, but yeah, I was there through every major land campaign. I don't want to talk about that too much, if you don't mind. Please, only what you're comfortable with. The old man looked out the window. The rain had let up, and the storm was dying down. He could see the boats taking advantage of the lull to start hauling in their catch. Mostly, it was salmon and tuna. The fisheries had taken hold, and now the planet was teeming with familiar life. The young man spoke up. What made you join and stay through the whole war? How could I not? I told you I knew almost nothing about any of this world when I found that beacon. Yet they welcomed us with open arms. They took settlers from every corner of Earth they could. It didn't matter to them. They wanted to give us a new home. Their soldiers died keeping us alive, even though we couldn't help the war effort in any meaningful way at the start. They wouldn't allow us to join at first. They were fighting and dying to give us a new home. He shook his head slowly. Then, as he looked at his coffee, I didn't hate the robots or the harmies. They'd come to this new world and lost their way. They let it change them into becoming more alien or more machine until they forgot what being human actually meant. All the Slavic Federation wanted to do was give us a chance to share in the prosperity and tranquility they'd found in this new world. They hadn't understood that the machines and aliens found this threatening. They'd already shed their humanity, while those of us who remained pure fought tooth and nail to make this planet a new home for those who'd been left behind. You think they weren't human anymore? They were aliens and machines by the time I got here. Even if some part of them knew what they used to be, they left it behind. But the others, the Slavic Federation, the Brazilla, the Franco-Iberia, they never forgot what they left behind. It was us. And when they had the chance to bring us to our new home, they took it. And someday, I hope to go back and turn Earth back into what we know it can be. That's our burden, but we take it willingly. That's what keeps us pure. And this is when you want to pioneer the expedition back to Earth. There hasn't been any more contact in 20 years, you know, and you're quite advanced in your age at this point. I'm old, kid. You can come out and say it. But why this continuous struggle? Why not just let the next generation take up the task? The old man smiled and ran a hand over his withered and scarred face. There's an old quote I remember from being a kid. Some old god had made this strong guy carry the world on his shoulders. When the man begged the god, it wasn't to end his burden. He begged for broader shoulders so that he may carry it more easily. Not everyone remembers. Not everyone will carry the burden. But those that do it because we must, not because we are asked. End of story. I would just quickly like to thank the T5 peeps: Dragon Soup, Cold War Boomerwaffen, Severin Cerberus, Red Panda 121, Leslie 517, Bushmaster 177, Caspar Arnold, Cam Maxwell, Sans the Skeleton, Lightjock, Dragzoon WRE, and Lord Azrakal. Thank you very much.